FIFA called it the most inclusive World Cup ever held. 16 host cities, 3 countries, 48 teams, and a promise that borders would matter less than usual for 6 weeks. More than 500 million ticket requests came in before the first match was played. Between 6 and 7 million international visitors were expected to enter the United States alone. On the surface, the tournament delivered exactly what it promised. Stadiums were finished ahead of schedule. Broadcast deals closed for record amounts. Every part of the operation the cameras were meant to show went according to plan. But behind that visible success, a separate and much slower system was already deciding who would actually be allowed to attend. The first problem showed up not in stadiums, but in visa waiting rooms. Long before kickoff, immigration lawyers warned that the process for getting a basic tourist visa, the kind required by most fans, was badly overloaded. In Brazil, Colombia, and Turkey, wait times for a simple interview stretched to 600 or 700 days. In Bogotá, the wait reached 677 days, longer than the time left before the tournament would even end. In New Delhi, wait times passed 380 days. Fans in India, the UAE, Peru, and Honduras commonly waited more than 400 days for an appointment. Officials tried to respond. They introduced a system called FIFA Pass, designed to move approved fans through the process faster. But it came with a limit. It only helped applicants the government had already decided to prioritize. For everyone else, the backlog stayed exactly where it was. Then came a second layer, harder to solve with paperwork alone. In the spring before the tournament, the Department of Homeland Security confirmed that immigration agents would be stationed at World Cup stadiums. Officials said their role was limited to public safety, not immigration enforcement. The claim was met with skepticism, and the numbers explain why. In the year before the tournament, the country had recorded more than 167,000 immigration arrests, with several World Cup host cities ranking among the most heavily enforced areas in the country. At the same time, the administration had expanded its travel restrictions to 75 countries, a list that overlapped with several nations whose teams had qualified to play. A valid ticket and a valid visa were no longer enough on their own to guarantee a straightforward entry. That reality became concrete at Chicago O'Hare, when Iraq's national team landed for the tournament. One of the team's forwards, credentialed and expected, was detained for several hours, questioned repeatedly, and had his phone searched before he was allowed to enter the country he had come to play in. Similar incidents were soon reported involving players and staff from Iran and Senegal. These were professional athletes traveling under official credentials, not undocumented arrivals. If they were treated this way, the implications for ordinary ticket holders, arriving without a federation behind them, were not hard to imagine. The question worth asking is not why individual officers behaved this way, but why 3 governments capable of building world-class stadiums on tight deadlines could not build an entry process to match. The answer has less to do with failure and more to do with priorities. The Department of Homeland Security committed more than $115 million to counter drone technology alone, describing it as a matter of protecting American airspace during the tournament. Mexico deployed roughly 100,000 security personnel, including military forces, for the tournament period. From the outset, this had been planned primarily as a security operation, one that happened to have a football tournament running inside it. Once that framework was set, every later decision followed the same logic. Immigration enforcement was never treated as a separate track from the tournament. Agency leadership described it directly as a key part of World Cup security planning, coordinated alongside ticketing and transportation. The human rights safeguards meant to balance that approach lagged far behind. Only 4 of the 16 host cities in the United States had published a human rights plan before the tournament began, and several cities had already signed agreements allowing local police to work directly with federal immigration agents. Independent monitors described the overall climate in stark terms, pointing to aggressive detentions carried out by agents who frequently withheld their names and covered their faces. No single agency was solely responsible for this outcome, largely because no single agency was accountable for the whole of it. FIFA marketed the openness. The State Department processed the applications. Homeland Security managed the perimeter. Local police departments signed their own separate arrangements. Each institution carried out its own mandate correctly, according to its own definition of the job. It was in the space between those mandates that individual travelers were left without a clear answer, and without anyone directly responsible for closing the gap. That gap was felt most directly by people who did not have the option of simply staying away. In Los Angeles, members of the union representing stadium workers voted to authorize a strike, citing fears that immigration enforcement inside the venue could lead to workers or their family members being detained. A last-minute agreement prevented the walkout, but its terms revealed the underlying concern. Workers secured the right to leave their shift if they believed enforcement activity put them at risk, a provision that would have been unusual at any previous major sporting event. For fans, the concern took a quieter form, but was no less persistent. Advocacy groups repeatedly noted that the primary fear was not deportation in a dramatic sense, but something smaller, being pulled aside, questioned in public, or treated with suspicion based on nationality. Spread across millions of travelers, that low-level unease became a constant undercurrent running beneath a tournament built around the idea of welcome. Viewed as a whole, the pattern is clear. This was not a case of poor planning in any conventional sense. Nearly everything the tournament was designed to showcase, the stadiums, the ticket sales, the broadcasts, performed exactly as intended. What lagged behind, largely outside public view, was the infrastructure meant to receive people rather than simply contain them. 3 governments demonstrated they could construct stadiums on an accelerated schedule. None of them demonstrated the same capacity to process a visa, staff, a checkpoint, or coordinate a human rights plan on that same timeline. That difference points to something beyond football. In a period defined by tightening borders and heightened security politics, even an event explicitly built around uniting nations for 6 weeks could not fully separate itself from the broader instincts of border control. The tournament did not override the border surrounding it. It operated within that border's logic, adjusting around it rather than replacing it. By the time the tournament ended, some fans were still checking visa appointment portals, watching wait times that would extend well past the tournament's final match, still waiting on paperwork tied to an event that, for them, had already come and gone.